Okay, I've realized that I just never ask for likes, and apparently when I ask for likes, you guys actually show up. So if you enjoy this video, consider leaving it a like. It really helps the channel. I feel like I've had a headache for the last 4 days. I was originally gonna make a video about Trapped's Twitter meltdown, but I just didn't know if my brain cells could handle that, so I decided that due to these dark times of social isolation, I would offer up some film advice, some things that you guys can watch. And too many people are just popping on Netflix and watching the first thing that gets recommended. I shudder to think about how many people have suffered through Love is Blind because it was the first thing that Netflix recommended to them. And my friends, life is too short to waste your time on Tall Girl. Sierra Burgess is a loser, cause she really is. In the Tall Grass and The Kissing Booth. We definitely don't have time for In the Kissing Booth right now, ya nasties. So I never ended up making my best of 2019 video. I was on the Intercut podcast talking about my favorite movies of 2019, but I figured that this was actually a good opportunity to talk about some of those movies because at this point, a lot of them are now available either on streaming services or through rental or even purchasing if you're feeling extra into it. Also, before we get into this specific 2019 list, I do have an overall social isolation list on my Letterboxd that I'll have linked down below. So let's start with my absolute favorite of 2019, Portrait of a Lady on Fire, the latest from French directrice Céline Sciamma. This is an incredibly beautiful movie about a woman who is hired to paint the portrait of another woman who is being unwillingly given away in marriage. It's a beautiful drama, romance, but it's also just a tragic look at freedom and a lack thereof. This movie essentially has 3 endings and each one stabs me in the heart a little bit more until I'm left a crying wreck in the Bell Lightbox Theater room and the number 28 will never be the same. This is now freshly available on Hulu and will be available for rent in April, with the Criterion Collection has opened pre-orders for it and currently have a 30% off sale going, I believe, until April 30th. This one might come as a shock considering how much I do end up making fun of some of the teen-related Netflix movies, but I really think that this particular movie is very pertinent to our way of living right now. So we were starting off with one of the finest selections in the teen death romance category. It is the movies that make romantic stories out of teenagers dying, potentially started with A Walk to Remember, but has been popularized by such novels by John Green that went on to become things like The Fault is in Our Stars, and most of them are a little bit weird, but I'm recommending 5 Feet Apart because even in the movie, they're supposed to be 6 feet apart, which is exactly the life we're living right now. If you ain't 6 feet apart from the people around you, you ain't here to party, because you shouldn't be anywhere else to party. So it's basically just a story of teenagers that have cystic fibrosis, which is a very serious lung condition. They can't share their germs, so that's why they have to stay 6 feet apart. And I just think that maybe we can all learn a little something. And honestly, in terms of this style of movie, I didn't hate it. I actually had a really good time watching it before the year really progressed itself. It was shockingly high on my 2019 list. Another one that I thought was shockingly fun was Fighting with My Family, starring Florence Pugh, who just went on to tear up 2019 and stole all of our hearts with such heartwarming roles like Danny in Midsommar. I'm not a fan of wrestling, so I don't really know the intricacies of the situation in this movie and the family being portrayed, and I've heard some people complain about it, but overall, I enjoyed this way more than I thought I would. I remember they announced this as the secret movie at last year's Sundance, and everyone kind of laughed, but I had a really good time watching it. 100% would recommend. Apparently, it's available on Hulu, and you can rent it. Touching on some horror-related flicks, we're gonna start with The Nightingale, which I do actually have an entire video about my experience at last year's Sundance. It was kind of a very wild movie experience, all things considered. And that's actually my 3rd most viewed video of all time, which is kind of crazy. It's a very brutal watch and has a couple of very, very rough scenes. And I do think there's some people that aren't going to be able to handle it. So depending if you've kind of experienced different traumas in your life, it might be something you want to look into a little bit more before you watch it. But the movie is incredibly well made. It can run a little long. I feel like they could have shaved off some of the time on it, but it's definitely worth the watch. And if you want a little bit more spoiler-free information, feel free to check my video, which I'll have linked up below. This is available on Hulu, and of course you can rent it. And of course we would not be talking about 2019 horror unless I took a second and talked about Midsommar. And if you've seen Hereditary, you might as well just continue with Ari Aster's mission of putting grief to film and lingering on really uncomfortable imagery. This is probably not the movie to watch with a significant other if you don't feel like your relationship's going really well, or maybe it's a really good opportunity to kick your life in the pants and get yourself in order. I don't know. I can't judge you. Swedish Summer Festival, disturbing rituals, fantastic acting, stunning visuals, beautiful cinematography. No one is doing what Ari Aster is doing in film right now, and that's probably a good thing because I don't think I could handle any more than one movie like this a year. This should be available streaming on Amazon Prime in the US and Canada, and it's also available through rental. First foreign film up on the dock, we're going to be talking about Takashi Miike's First Love, which I've mentioned a few times before. This is one of my favorites coming out of TIFF. I absolutely loved it. It's a fun, over-the-top, violent movie about the Yakuza feuding with the Chinese gang over stolen drugs and this girl who gets caught up in the middle and this guy who chooses to help her because he feels like he has nothing left to lose. Don't let the title fool you. This movie is badass. Now, do you want a movie with an Academy Award-winning actress threatening a Disney star with a shard of glass, and that Disney star then goes on to bite the ear off a zombie child, and the whole thing is happening at a petting zoo in New Zealand? Of course you do! Little Monsters was one of my absolute favorite movies from last year, and hearing the director talk about his inspiration for making it made me love it even more. Academy Award-winning actress Luce is trying to keep her kindergarten class safe from a contained zombie outbreak while simultaneously trying to convince them that nothing is going on, and then the whole thing is just a game. We got blood, we got comedy, we got Taylor Swift on the ukulele. It's just good fun. And this one is available streaming on Hulu, and you can also rent it. Now, The Lighthouse is a movie that actually gets better every single time I watch it. Another incredibly stylistic horror director, David Eggers, who also did The Witch or The Vivitch, brought us the height of cabin fever and the downside to social isolations and just being trapped inside this lighthouse while the world outside you falls apart. Is it a good idea to watch this movie right now? Is it a little bit too real? I don't know. It could actually just give you the perspective that things could always be significantly worse. I did a light review on this video while also talking about Parasite and Zombieland 2, and I do actually want to make an entire video talking about all the different research and the inspiration that went into the script behind this and all the different work that he does as a director when he makes these stories. We'll probably still do that. It'll really leave you wondering about these old sailor tales, how much is true, how much is just bad luck. And it's also significantly more hilarious at times than it has any business being.
And plunges right through your gullet, bursting ye.
All right, have it your way. I like to cook it.
Defoe was 100% snubbed by the Academy. I would definitely recommend the watch. Now we're going to steer into some of the more quirky stuff, or just the stuff that doesn't necessarily fit a certain genre, and we're going to start off with that with The Art of Self-Defense. And I don't know what I was expecting going into this movie, but it was absolutely wild. It stars Jesse Eisenberg playing a pretty meek guy who ends up getting jumped at the start and then goes on to take karate lessons to learn how to defend himself. Everything that falls out after this is completely wild, but I do need to do my civic duty and let you know that something happens to a dog in this movie. But there is vengeance. I think it's worth a watch overall if you're in for something a little bit different. I believe this is available to rent all over, and it seems to be available on Crave for streaming in Canada, so maybe Hulu in the US. Next up was one of the most talked of the town last year that some people might not have had a chance to watch yet, and it is Uncut Gems. Unfortunately, I do think this was recently removed from streaming on Netflix in the US, but it is still available in Canada, and I think the rest of the world on Netflix, so you can still watch it there. I'm still planning to do a full video on this movie, but my best description of describing how it feels to watch this is that you think you're starting a movie with a guy who's just digging a hole, and his life's just getting worse as he digs this hole, but then you quickly realize that he was already 5 feet in the hole before the movie even started, and we're just watching that last foot go down. This is an incredibly stressful movie to watch. It's like 2 hours of Scott's tots. There were 2 older couples in front of me at TIFF that had to leave halfway through because it was stressing them out too much, and one of my friend's Apple Watches was alerting him to a heightened heart rate. It's easily one of the best performances Adam Sandler has ever given in his life, and it's a damn shame that he got no love from the Academy for it. It's a wild ride. Next up is something that needs no introduction. We're talking Parasite. No surprises here. Won the Academy Award for Best Picture, and it's well deserved. This is an incredibly well-made movie by South Korean director Bong Joon-ho, and it excels everywhere. The story is tight, it juggles serious social commentary while standing on its own as a great film, something some other films have struggled with or downright failed at in recent memory. It goes through a multitude of themes from comedy to drama to thriller with a sprinkle of horror. The acting's incredible, the shots are incredible, the house is incredible, well worth getting over the 1-inch tall barrier of subtitles and giving this a watch. You should be able to rent this pretty much everywhere right now. And for my last quirky recommend is Under the Silver Lake, which I actually watched back in 2018, and then it didn't get any kind of push until 2019, and even then, they still didn't push it. This is an A24 movie, the champion of the independent film that does such a good job marketing its stuff and making people fall in love with these off-the-beat films that usually wouldn't have gotten any recognition otherwise. So I have no idea why they failed so much with their promotion and distribution of this movie, because it does have a super dedicated fan base. This movie is basically a wild conspiracy-driven film in which the main character, Sam, played by Andrew Garfield, tries to figure out what happened to a girl that he met at his apartment complex after she abruptly vanishes overnight. It's wild, it's got a bunch of secret codes, there's an entire subreddit dedicated to decoding all the different things in the movie and trying to find secret meaning on things in album covers and pizza boxes and symbols on walls. I absolutely love it. I believe this is available on Amazon Prime for streaming, and if you have to rent it, I personally think it's definitely worth it, especially if you're looking for something that's just a little bit less conventional. So now we're gonna kind of get into some of the comedy, drama related stuff, and we'll start off with one that I know is just added to Hulu in the United States, Big Time Adolescent, starring Griffin Gluck and Pete Davidson. Again, this was one of my favorites from last year's Sundance. This is a coming of age story where a teenager is looking up to an older guy as a personal hero, and that older guy loves having the teenager around because it makes him feel cool. Pete's character obviously isn't the best role model and ultimately starts to corrupt Griffin's character. So overall, I think this is a really solid, hilarious, yet at times very depressing coming of age story. Y'all know I love my coming of age stories, but if you have Hulu, no reason not to pop this on, but I would recommend the rent if it's available for rent. On to another coming of age, no surprise, we got Booksmart on the list. If you haven't managed to catch Booksmart yet, I highly recommend it. I love the fact that this movie has nothing to do with friendships being ruined because a guy gets in the way. It has nothing to do with petty jealousy or competition, which is so refreshing. Obviously, there's conflict, but it's more to do with differences in personal growth and becoming their own people. It also does a really great job showing that just because you think you're better than other people doesn't mean they're not going to be successful. The nerdy kids can be jerks too, and the people that were mean to you aren't all destined for failure. The person who bullied me the most is the heiress to an entire shipping corporation. Her life's gonna be fine. This is available on Amazon Prime. Another one that I have a full video for, Knives Out. I love this movie. We got good old whodunit wrapped in a thriller. It's such a fun watch. Incredible performances from everyone involved. I think it looks beautiful as a movie, and there are so many little Easter eggs throughout the house and throughout the film in general that you'll catch on repeat viewings. Very, very fun watch. Next up is Jojo Rabbit, which was another Academy Award nominee and screenplay winner. Again, got a full video about this on my channel, but it's essentially a satire taking a look at how easy it is to indoctrinate people in hateful ideologies and how pertinent that still is today, and how easy it can be to change those views when people are given the chance to confront the things they think they hate. Not many people seem to dislike this movie, so it's definitely a recommend from me. Another big nominee at the Academy Awards, we got Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Tarantino's love letter to Hollywood, as well as what might have been a meta look at his own career and legacy. Movie follows washed-up actor Rick Dalton as he stares down the barrel of his own obsolescence at the turn of the decade. This is another one of Tarantino's flipped history movies, changing the events from the Manson murders, but unlike The Haunting of Sharon Tate, this doesn't just turn into a weird exploitation horror on a real tragedy, and ultimately lends to a greater commentary on Tarantino's own critics who constantly come at him for the violence in his films. It's a slower burn for most of the movie, but my God, does he make up for that in his final act. Now, my favorite video on my channel remains to this day to be my Shia LaBeouf video, and in that video, I talk about Peanut Butter Falcon. So if you haven't seen that video, you should go watch it because I love it, and it's my baby. I love that video so much. But Peanut Butter Falcon specifically is this amazing journey of a movie. It's so heartwarming. I went out of my way to watch it in LA, and I'm from Canada. Dakota Johnson stans, I know you're out there. Watch this movie. It's just great. It's just so nice. Keeping on that train, we're gonna go into Honey Boy, which you guys should also know was basically my movie of 2019. I just got my Alma Harrell shirt. She directed it. I've got like 2 different Honey Boy shirts. I fell in love with that movie at last year's Sundance, made sure to prioritize it at TIFF last year to watch it a second time, and I'm patiently waiting for the day that I can buy a physical copy of this movie. This is largely an autobiography on Shia's life as a child star while dealing with the abuse from his addict, alcoholic father, and learning to let go of years of the pent-up pain that led to his own breakdowns in life. This is a beautiful movie. I love it. If you were in the US, this is available on Amazon Prime, and I urge you to watch it. Also watch my Shia video. I worked really hard on it. Another of my tops from last year's Sundance, The Farewell. This is an excellent film by director Lulu Wang, starring Awkwafina, whose family moved from China to America when she was about 6 years old. It's revealed that her grandmother is dying of cancer, and rather than telling her, the family is staging a fake wedding in China to get everyone together one last time. And China, this is seen as an act of kindness so the person doesn't spend their last days worrying. This is obviously difficult for Billy, who feels the pull from each culture. It's a beautiful movie, and for something with such seemingly depressing subject matter, it's actually very funny. I know this is available on Prime in Canada, so it's probably available on Amazon Prime in the US. Definitely worth your time. Now, I mentioned this in my Oscar discussion video, but I relate to nothing in Marriage Story. But my God, what an excellent film that made me feel so much for an area of the world that I just have nothing in common with. It's such a well-made, well-scripted, well-directed, and well-acted movie about a family's struggle during divorce. Adam Driver and Scarlett both did such an amazing job here. I've said it before, but I wish this movie had come out in 2020, because with the steep 2019 competition, it just struggled to pick up awards that it could have easily won any other year. Obviously, this was funded by Netflix, so it is available on Netflix and should be available on Netflix worldwide. Then some newer ones that should be rolling out into rental. Little Women, in which Greta Gerwig actually managed to make Amy a likable character and allowed each of the sisters' motivations to shine as valuable, which is kind of amazing considering how many times this has been attempted. I love the way they implemented a non-linear storytelling, and I really love that it infused some of what Louisa May Alcott might have been truly trying to express, but wasn't able to because of the time that she was living in. 1917, I know, just came out this week, and while I realize it's definitely something better suited to a theater experience, I do think it's worth the watch at home. It's a pretty simple story, pretty simple script, but the enjoyment comes from the fluidity of the whole movie being designed to feel like one take. I think they do a really good job doing that. Amazing cinematography, as expected. The Gentleman, I know it's a 2020 movie, and I know that people are like, it's like if someone was pretending to be Guy Ritchie, but it's actually Guy Ritchie, but I loved this movie. I had such a good time watching it. And then a few other ones would be Last Black Man in San Francisco, Happy Death Day to You, The Report, Luce, Waves, Ready or Not, and The Velocipaster. There are so many amazing movies that came out in 2019. These are some of the ones I recommended that I figured people might not have saw, or I just felt like I wanted to talk about again. So thank you all so much for watching. Have a fantastic day. Stay safe out there. Wash your hands. Maintain your 6 feet of space. Don't go out if you don't have to. Have a fantastic day, and we'll catch you all later.